Good evening, everyone. How are you? Hi. I don't know if you noticed that we taped off the back because we were forcing you, unlike what we do with our students, right? You all gravitate towards the back. We know. For those who don't know me, my name's Jamie Silver. I'm the Director of College Advising. You will probably get many an email from me, so I will apologize in advance. But I do want to welcome you to kind of introduction to the college advising process, and hopefully we'll have time for all of your questions at the end. We'll try to kind of speed through as much as possible, and also recognize that you all have other things that you probably need to do tonight. And so we appreciate you heading out. I'm going to actually ask my colleagues to introduce themselves before I jump into our presentation.
I'm Peggy Clark, for the 15 or so of you that I haven't worked with before. I've been back here 7 years now, so I've been here long enough to be on my second and sometimes third child in a family. So it's nice to see old friends, and I look forward to getting to know new friends and family. I will just quickly say that for those of you who haven't worked with me for a while, it is true that we start a little earlier nowadays than we used to. And part of it is we just think that the longevity of the relationship is aided by having more time to get to know your child as well as with you. So, hello and welcome.
And I'm Matt Waldman. I am the third college advisor here at KO and associate director of college advising along with Peggy Clark. And this will be my third cycle here at KO, and I even still have some siblings, which is fantastic, and so I'm excited to see some of those people in the crowd and get to know new people as I work with you and your student. So thank you.
And hopefully you got a chance to meet Blair. Blair Elia is the coordinator of college resources in our office. She's often the person you want to talk with, whether it's about processing or any emails. She often is able to get right back to you. And so if you haven't met Blair, please take a moment. She really helps us keep the show running throughout a very, very busy school year. So welcome. If you see the slide behind us, you'll see that there's the college advising guide for those who have had kids through the process. We have gone green, and you will see that much of this information is all online, and really is an opportunity for you to kind of see kind of detailed information about interviews, testing, the college process. It's really a good kind of first go if you have specific questions and you can't necessarily reach us. This is a good place to start. So encourage you to also encourage your kids to take a look at the college advising guide. And we'll put this up again, and it should also be on your college checklist. For those who have not gotten the packets, it looks like a lot of you have. Much of that information we won't necessarily be using tonight. A lot of it is things that we'll refer to, but also things to get to know throughout the years. You'll see, hopefully, that your assignment of kind of who you are working with. So we hope you'll take an opportunity to say hello to us afterwards, especially if we don't know you. Your kids are also getting an email, or they should have gotten an email kind of at the same time. So they should, by the time you get home, know also who they are working with. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us either tonight or in the future. So I just wanted to make sure to show you the agenda, kind of the things we're going to talk about. And we love to talk, and so we'll do our best to breeze through the slides and then have the opportunity to answer your questions, because that's really what we want to be here for, is to help you all navigate the process, whether it's your first, your third, your fourth, whatever student it is. So we will talk about our office and kind of what to expect from the college office here at KO. We do things a little bit different, just like any other institution. Every school is going to have their own kind of culture of how they work with you and your family. We are also going to talk about kind of curricular choices for Form 5. This is a much broader perspective. We're not going to necessarily talk about potentially your individual kid, and so you'll often hear in the college admission process the words, "it depends," because a lot of times it requires detailed information and one-on-one follow-up and conversation. So we'll just give you some tips. The next is the standardized testing. You've gotten, I would say, the bulk of your information that you've received from us so far has to do with the testing process and calendar. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about our philosophy. And then, again, it's very individualized. And then the timeline of the college process. And kind of when to do what. And you'll see that you all have a checklist. We give that out to our students as well. It's a great thing if you want to like hang it onto your next year, hang it onto the fridge. It's a good step-by-step at different times of the year. So I'm just going to start with who are we, right? We are 3 college advisors and 1 a coordinator of college resource. And for a school our size, that's really exceptional. And I think I've worked at a number of institutions, and I love the opportunity to really not only get to know the kids, but all the kids and their families. I think we have a real special opportunity that we are so individualized. So we have a ratio of about 1 to 30. So the 3 of us, our sole job is college advising. We are not teaching, coaching, or any other responsibilities. Obviously, we are part of the KO community, but our job is to be experts in our field and to support you and your families. And that is something that is, I would say, unique and distinctive about KO, and we take it very seriously in that we are not necessarily giving you a one-size-fits-all message about the college process, because that's just not how it works. Post-secondary planning is very individualized, and we really take that to heart of what works best for you and your family, and really take the opportunity to partner with our parents to kind of figure out what are the right messages. And I think that's the part, being at a day school and kind of in our office with the small case sizes, that we really have the opportunity to get to know you and your child. So the other is like, how do we do this, right? We also have a very student-centered approach that we're not necessarily, I would say that I often joke with kids and say, I'm probably the person who cares least about where you end up in terms of a college, as long as it's a place that you're really happy. And we spend a lot of time talking to a kid about who they are and what they like to do so that we can find the right fit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, to think about as that's guiding our process. And so we really spend a lot of time with the student at the heart of all of our work, and really thinking about what matters to them and kind of where they want to see themselves in 10 years, 15 years, not just about how to get out of high school and then what's next. And so we really spend a lot of time in that focus of really thinking about what's right for them right now, but also kind of what does their future look like and what are they hoping for. We also walk through, for those families who are new to this and who are feeling, oh my God, I don't know what to do, there's so much information out there. We walk you through virtually the entire process. So we spend time on the essay writing, so we are right now actually in the English department in Form 5 in the junior classes. We partner with our English department, working through the essay, what to write, when to write it. They add it as an English assignment. We also spend time with our students one-on-one, having meetings about their college lists. We also work here throughout the summer so that we get to meet with your kids if they are around. So we are really walking through deadlines, applications, and kind of big picture to the nuts and bolts of the details. And again, that's kind of going back to that student-centered approach. And then the last piece is just we really partner and focus on this idea of individual and parent meetings and family meetings, that we are meeting with your kids one-on-one. So we often will meet with them first, and then we want to partner with the families. And so we meet with the kid, and then we meet with the families all together, so we can hear kind of all the stakeholders in the room and work together to see what's next.
So what makes this work fun and exciting is that there's a lot of exploration, both of the college environment, but also for the students and the families themselves. And so we return to kind of a similar thought every single time, and that is that all that you really need to do as a family and as a student is to know one person really well. His name is Dean Fitzsimmons. He works at Harvard College, and that's the guy you got to know. Just kidding. The good news for the student is that the goal for them is to really know themselves really, really well. As you can probably attest, this is not going to just work if we throw the same 10, 15 schools at every single student, or for them to all apply to the same 10 or 15 schools. This is really about figuring out what works, for the student to figure out what works for me, where will I thrive. And so, we begin with some guiding questions. We want the students to figure out, who am I? What do I like to do? And that means, where do I see myself going? So as we start next year, we're going to ask students to think about, where do you see yourself in your future? How do you want to get there? What does that look like? Who's around you? And of course, we want them to also think about what's worked and what hasn't worked in their education so far. What kind of learner am I? What suits me best? And there are colleges for all of those different things. So there's schools where students get to be more collaborative, and there's schools where students get to be more competitive. There are colleges where they're going to be hands-on, and colleges where they're going to be asked to think abstractly and critically analyze. And of course, there's colleges that have a number of these different experiences rolled into one, and so we want them to think about those. Our students, as you can imagine, teenagers tend to roll their eyes quite a bit when we ask them, who do you think you are? And so they find the test, honestly, they find that sort of reflection very frustrating. But I will say, if you're asking yourself, what can we be doing in the weeks and months ahead to really try to get the most out of the college process, even though it's really far away, there's only a few answers, and one of the best ones is going to be, try to figure out the answers to these questions, and try to understand your student and for them to understand themselves very well. We can begin by asking you to do this exercise. So I'm going to give you a few quiet moments. Typically, I'll tell students, you have 3 minutes on the clock to write down some thoughts around these. So I'm going to say 3 minutes on the clock for you to write down some notes. You can put them in your phone. You could do pen and paper, and I think we even have something in your handout that asks similar questions to this. But these 3 questions, try to answer these about your child. I hear some chatting. You're supposed to be writing. Some blank stares. 20 seconds, dig deep. All right, time's up. And so, again, we return to this thought, right? It's so much easier for you to know your child well, for you to ask yourself those questions about who they are, where they're going to learn best, and then bring those to our team. And of the 4,000 some colleges that are out there, there's maybe, honestly, 300, 200 schools that you might actually consider. And it's our job to make sure that we're not missing any of those opportunities out there for you. And so we go out there and we're actively studying all of these different schools. But if you can start and your students can start to know who they are and how they learn best and actually think about those things and bring in a way where they can communicate them, preferably, that's what's going to make this process really work, and that's what's at the heart of our student-centered approach.
And now you all get to see whether I can handle the technology as smoothly as Mr. Waldman did. So my slides have to do with the process of selecting coursework for the junior year. And I think one of the things that I've always really liked about the college process in general is that embedded in the different steps of the process are just wonderful life skills about how to consider options, how to consider oneself, and how to make choices in a context where we are blessed with a lot of different choices. And so picking the junior year courses is another time when kids, with you as their consultants and their academic advisors, can take a look at what the options are for junior year and can make choices that are right for them. That's the art of the selection. They probably have made choices as to what they're taking so far, but they're a whole year older now, and they're feeling, I hope it's not the pressure, but they're understanding that the place where they are in the high school now is when where the outcome of the choices that they make will have an impact on what happens after this. What happens after this is not the final step, so this is a continuing process. And I don't want to describe this next step of choosing their junior courses as though it's somehow or other a make or break situation, but it is an opportunity for them to do more of that self-reflection and to think about what's the right combination of courses for them to take. So if you have older children, and I personally know that many of you do, you've been to info sessions at colleges and you have heard that the students should be taking the most rigorous courses that they can. And that's probably said in a fairly loud voice, and in a quieter afterthought, they add that they can do well in. And so that tension is where the art of picking coursework individually for a course in a subject area as well as collectively over the 5 or 6 courses that they're taking comes in. So the next joke is, of course, somebody in the audience at an info session or a meeting like this will say, well, what's the better choice? Should you take the AP or the honors level course and get a B, or should you take the lower level course and get an A? And the rest of the joke is the more selective the school, the more likely they are to say, no, you should take the AP level course and get the A. And so, right, you've heard it, you know. And so that's where the rest of us have to step in, and we have to keep an even keel ourselves so that we help the students to stay on an even keel. There are students who could take the harder course and they might get 3 hours of sleep a night in order to get that A, but there will be costs to that, and I'm going to suggest to you that in the long run those costs are not worth it. And so we have to help them balance that idea that, oh, I won't get into the college I want to get into if I'm not taking all of the most rigorous courses that I might take and getting the A in those courses. It's a long race, or let me get the right metaphor here. It's a long book with many chapters. And so you have to help your child. We have to help your child. Your academic advisor will help your child make the choices that are right for right now. And all you're really trying to do is set up that balance between challenge and a reasonable level of success that allows the child the bandwidth, if you will, to do all of the other things that your child likes to do, and get enough sleep, and be pleasant in your houses at night. So that means probably not everything. And learning how to make those choices without caving into any outside pressures is really a valuable part of this process. As the parent, you need to help them think not just about how hard a particular course is, but how hard or how much the demand will be from the combination of courses in addition to what else they want to do outside of school. And outside of school means outside of KO as well, because many of your children have a very active life and activities that aren't just KO based. And yes, there's still only 24 hours in a day. So you have to help them work through that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the kinds of questions you can ask. You know the teachers in February are thinking about placements for kids for next year. When we've been meeting with our juniors talking about senior year, we've been encouraging them to think about this kind of thing too. I'd go back over and read the comments from your child's teachers from this past semester and start talking about this in terms of what are you really enjoying? Are there any other courses that you might like to take? There's some electives that I just heard seniors today confirming that they actually get more wiggle room to take something other than what they have to take. And so this is a great time to explore as well. But they have to keep in mind what else is going on in their lives. Think about the personality of your child. I know because I'm on multiple, second and third children, I've had enough conversations to know that my own experience as a parent is true. They come in different sizes and varieties, and they tend to be at opposite ends of the spectrum at some point. So think about whether your child is the kind of child who can take on a lot, moves pretty quickly, nothing really much bothers that child, or whether you have a child who does fewer things but does them intensely. Because how much your child can take on does have a lot to do with the style that child has. So you, as the parent, you're putting all of those things into the hopper and helping a child make a choice for coursework that's appropriate for them. It doesn't hurt to say, let's look ahead as well in terms of if you want to be able to do this, what does that mean you have to do here? But again, I would encourage you not to make it a sort of a make or break kind of a decision, because there is always another chapter later on. I am doing really well with this clicker, I have to say. So summertime, we've had a lot of conversations with kids, mostly the juniors, because that's who we're meeting with at this point. But this is a wonderful conversation for sophomores to be having as well. They've got freshman year behind them. They've probably discovered a lot about themselves already. And so figuring out a productive summer is a good conversation to have as well at this point. There are lots of options. There is no one option that is better than another option. Okay? It's all good, as long as your child's not being a couch potato. Colleges really don't like that. So kids, there are lots of pre-college programs out there. Pick a college that your child is interested in, or a part of the country, or pick something close like UConn, which also has a lower price tag. and have them take something that they know they like, or have them take something that they've never tried before but might find interesting. Jobs. Believe it or not, colleges really like kids who've had experience working. At the sophomore year, it may be a volunteer job, perfectly okay. A couple of years ago, we had some seniors who worked nearly full-time at the Science Center up the street and had wonderful responsibilities. They didn't get paid a nickel, but it was a terrific experience. So do think about service kinds of activities as being a job, because at your children's age right now, that may be what's open to them. And that's really good experience as well. Internships. Kids all know that they should want internships. We get that question a lot. Got it today. That oftentimes has an age issue to it, particularly if they want to do something in law or in medicine and so forth. And so scale it back a little bit and let's talk shadow days. We offer a lot, mostly through junior achievement here. So having them keep their eyes and ears open for announcements in assembly or emails and signing up for one that's of interest. But we can also talk individually, and I can still remember Jamie last year excitedly taking his sophomore over to the Science Center so that he could meet some of the people over there. So we're happy to do whatever we can in that respect in terms of helping to connect kids with resources that we know are in the community. You all have wonderful resources too. It's one of the things I really like about working in a day school environment. And it may not surprise you to know that KO parents and KO alums are really happy to help out by working with current students as a way of paying it forward and paying it back. So do talk to us about that. And there are lots of summer camps and the Space Fair, if you were able to attend. We had 23 different organizations represented. We try to increase the number of local organizations that we have in any given year, but we have some of the regulars, Rustic Pathways, Where There Be Dragons, Go Putney, Abbey Road, things like that. I have that list, so if you missed the Space Fair, just let me know. I'm happy to share who was here, and you can get online and contact them and see what you like. One of the reasons we try to increase the local options is they tend to be much less expensive, and they're local, so that's a benefit too. And some of those have age frameworks to them, but again, if you start talking about this as a sophomore, you can see what's out there and you can begin to plan. Well, this summer may be this, and next summer you'll be old enough to do that. Okay. Again, colleges don't care what you do, they just really prefer kids who know how to go get something that they're interested in rather than being couch potatoes. And the more they do, the more they learn about themselves, which is the other return on investment. Okay. Spent a lot of time in the English classes helping the juniors to understand what and so what. And so the what are the, in the essay context, are the things, the experiences, the traits that you might talk about, and the so what is why is it important to you. And so when you're talking with your kids, whether it's about the course selection that I was just talking about or about the activities that they're doing this summer, the more you can ask them questions that have to do with so what. Why do you like that? So what is important about that for you? The easier it will be for them to slide into the kind of self-reflection that really is helpful in the college process. I think I'm done.
I want to just add here, I think that for some of our families, they come in and ask about, my student has family responsibilities, or there's some financial constraints or other issues that are surrounding this, and that's okay too. right? There's actually a place on the college applications where kids can say that they have family responsibilities. And I think that's really important. So all the things that we were talking about here also refer to extracurricular activities, the things that they do outside the classroom. I often say to kids, colleges want to know what you do when you have the chance to choose what you are doing. Okay? They don't have a checkbox of what you need to do. So I'll have families say, I need to do community service, right? I need to do more things outside the classroom. I need to do whatever, fill in the blank. And the reality is that colleges just want to get to know your kid. And the more opportunities they have to figure out who they are, the better opportunity they have to be able to share that with somebody else, right? And to be able to know why they like that science major. Why are they interested in engineering? Why are they interested in business? Why are they undecided because they can't choose one particular topic because I love everything? That's the opportunity for a summer when you are go, go, go throughout the school year, that having the opportunity of the summer or extracurricular activities to kind of step back and think, what do I actually like to do with my time is really important. And I think that it's not about, again, it's not about a checkbox. It's not about what they must do. It's about understanding why they like to do it. And so I think we can't say that more. And this is something that if you have questions, your kid can really come and talk with their college advisor about where do I even start? And we are happy to do that. And I think Peggy referred to this before. We are not starting individual meetings with your kids until junior year, right? So just because we have assigned you a college advisor doesn't mean we are starting the process tomorrow. We are here and we believe that there are so many messages out there in the college process and standardized testing, and we want you to have a person to call. So that's why we choose to do it this way and a little bit earlier, not because we want you, I always say that it's noise, right? There's a lot of noise out there. Everybody's going to say they're the expert. And we want to help you figure out what actually works for you and your family, that you're not having to wade through that noise on your own, right? Because we see the noise too. And so that's really, this is supposed to de-stress, not to ramp up. So I want to make sure to be clear about that. So I get the really fun topics. If you can't tell, you'll see this time and time again. This is one of the benefits of being the director is that you get the short straw. And this is about standardized testing. And I say that about the short straw. I really want to just share that, and I meant to say this before, we really work as a team. And so even though you have a college advisor, all three of us can answer questions for you and your family. And I really feel fortunate to work in an office with the three others. We laugh a lot and we have a lot of fun, and we really kind of pick each other's brains to figure out what's right for your children. So standardized testing. Most of our students will actually end up submitting the tests that they take in the junior year in the spring. So often that means the ACT, most of our students end up taking the February or April ACT for their first time at the end of the spring semester of their junior year. And then again, potentially in July or September. So not all four, but two, right? And with the SAT, most of our students will take the March or May, and then they'll take again, or June, depending upon their schedules, and then either August and sometimes October. I'm finding more and more, in the 2 decades that I've been in this profession, that October is actually less and less of an option for our students, not because they can't take it, but because they are so overloaded with so many other things that they don't have time to prep for their tests. And so the ones that are in the spring of their junior year, and then in the early summer, late summer of their before their senior year, those are the times that they have an actual opportunity to prep. Part of the reason why our kids, those are generally regardless of what many you could take 5, 6, right? That most colleges are asking for you to take 2, maybe 3, right? Most students will end up, no matter how many tests they take, submit the tests from the end of their junior year, potentially, or the beginning of their senior year, because that's when they have the most knowledge of the curriculum. And you're at a college prep institution, the best prep is actually the work that they are doing currently in the classroom. And so that is really important. So the more knowledge that they have, generally the better they do on the test. Seems to make sense. I will also tell you, the number one thing that the standardized testing tests, does anybody know what that is? It's how well you do on the test, right? And we could talk more and more about the philosophy. It's one of my favorite topics, and I often share that with the students. But that is what the colleges are looking at, as how well you are testing. There are lots of conversations about how it's a good predictor of your first year of your GPA, but time and time again, the thing that most matters in the college process is how well they do in their 4 years of high school, their transcript. The reason why we spend so much time talking about the test is because it's a quantitative number that is standardized across school districts and countries, and so it seems to make sense. Right? So we spend time on the things that we can understand. But I'm going to tell you that this is something that I actually think we spend maybe too much time. And you can disagree with me, and that's fine. I'm not going to be offended, right? But I want to tell you I'm bringing it from a student-centered perspective and somebody who's been doing this work, that this is probably the number one cause for anxiety that a student gets is through the testing. When students are focused on test preps in sophomore and junior year, my question to that student is, what are they not spending their time doing? If they are spending hours on their test prep, are they taking their eye off the ball in their classes? Are they not having the opportunity to actually do things that they love? And so I can tell you that I, as a tester, right, wasn't necessarily happy with taking tests. It's not the thing I remember about high school, right? I remember my clubs, I remember my activities, and I remember my classes. And so I just kind of encourage you to think about that as you're thinking about this. And again, I would encourage you to step and talk with the college advisors as you're making this plan for your student. As I said before, so not only is the best form of test prep kind of the curriculum that you're getting in your classes, but also the best form of test prep is actually taking tests in test-like conditions. And so oftentimes that is not something that costs a whole lot of money. You could take a book, you can bring your kid to the library. But there are all forms of test prep, whether that's tutoring, one-on-one, classes. It is important for students to actually do some sort of preparation for the test. Just like they wouldn't go into a biology class without taking some sort of studying for that test, you want them to have some sort of preparation. And so this is why we offer 4 of the practice tests, and so that we want them to go into their junior year having a plan of which test did I like better. Do I like the ACT or the SAT? Those are looked at virtually synonymous. Colleges do not care which one the kids submit. You can take the SAT or the ACT. We live in a region of the country that is SAT focused, mostly because the Northeast is that, and now Connecticut, the state test is the SAT. But if a kid does well and likes the ACT, then that's okay. They don't have to take the SAT as well. The goal of having the 4 practice tests is that they know after the 4 tests which one they like best, and they can focus on one. I know that we have another slide about kind of upcoming events. We do have a presentation in April from Summit Education Group about the differences between the tests, and so I would encourage you and or your kid is welcome to come, about the distinctions between the 2 individual tests. I would say that while some still choose to take the real ACT or real SAT, I would really encourage you, especially if you're thinking about standardized testing plans and using the data from some of the information that we've already taken from the practice SAT and ACT, talk with your college advisor and just get our feedback of what we have seen work for other students. Before you go ahead and kind of make a plan. Everybody's going to have an opinion on this, and I would just hope that you can kind of get ours as well about what we've seen work throughout the process. So then it's what else are the colleges looking for? So I spent a number of years on the other side of the desk. We also say the around the table. I worked at both Wesleyan and Connecticut College, so I spent a good amount of time reading all of these applications and thinking about what else are kids, or what else are the colleges looking at when they're thinking about the college admission process. First and foremost, they're looking at your students' grades. How well are they doing in their 4 years of high school? Some kids are 5, right? Depends on the student. They want to know each and every class and each and every grade. And so we will kind of share with you how they look. They're not going to see the comments from all your teachers. That's something that only goes to you and your student. They really just see those final year grades from KO. And they're looking at the rigor of curriculum, as Peggy talked about, as well as the individualized grades. We are an institution that actually does not report GPA to colleges. Colleges oftentimes recalculate their own GPAs depending upon what they're thinking about and looking at. And so we really want to force colleges to be looking at each class and each grade in each year. So they're looking at the trajectory of a student's kind of story throughout KO. I always say that I think that if we were to give them just the GPA, it's a pretty easy, fast thing to look at, whereas this really forces them to spend some time digging deep into your child's curriculum. They also are spending a lot of time understanding the student. And I think one of the ways they do that, there's a couple of ways. One is, what do they choose to do extracurricularly? You know, how do they spend their time when they get the choice to spend time? And that may also, I say choice. Some have responsibilities, it's not a choice, right? They have a standard responsibility, whether it's younger siblings, grandparents, whatever the case may be. They want to know what their kid is doing outside of the class time. The other thing they are looking at is your teacher recommendations. Their teacher recommendations, we also as the college advisors will write a counselor recommendation, and it's really giving this idea of what is the kid like in the classroom? What is the story behind the grades? Is the student a hard worker? Are they intellectually curious? What is the relationship that they have with their teachers? What is the academic advisor kind of how well does that teacher know their student? And I will say that our teachers know our students quite well. That should be of no surprise to anybody in the room. And so that's really a benefit to our kids. They have a choice of who they ask. This is one of those opportunities in the college process that they actually have a choice, right? They want to ask the people that know them best as students. And we will spend some time talking with your kid about that. And then I think we talked about kind of the essay. The essay really is that personalized personal statement, kind of putting meat on the bones, thinking about the what and the so what matters to that kid. And so there are a whole host of other things that a college is looking at, but that's kind of the criteria and the things that they're looking at in an application that make up that application.
The fun part, visiting. A couple of years ago, we had an outside presentation on college visits, and we all, the three of us, were horrified when he said, and so you should start that right now, speaking to a group of sophomores. So, not necessarily. But at some point, likely in the spring of junior year and in the summer in between junior and senior year, you will be taking some trips to go visit some colleges. We spend time in our VQV classes, which we do with the juniors. And for those of you with older children, you may have been in one of the years where we did not have it the way we have it now. But our current pattern is to do 3 VQV classes in the fall of junior year. And then in the spring semester, we're doing one about every other week. And so we try very hard to plan the curriculum in the junior year VQV so that we're preparing the students to handle the parts of the process that are coming up in the spring of the year, which is the search part of the process. And obviously, visiting schools as much as you can is part of that. But whenever you're talking about that, for example, some of you may already be quite familiar with the fact that about 80 or so kids go to Tobati every March break. So if they're doing that junior year, that pretty much takes care of visiting colleges during that year. So you do what you can when you can do it. And you don't have to necessarily pick the farthest school away to get started. You can do some basic toggles visits with your kids where you are looking at things like what kind of setting do I like for the student? Do I like a city setting? Do I like a suburban setting that is near a fairly major metropolitan area? Am I comfortable going in a more rural area? How about size? How about geography? How close is too close and how far away is too far away? And that I have found from my own experience with my own kids can vary tremendously by student. That, I think, is one of those factors that you take a look at the personality of your child. One of mine was asking how far away could she go and how early, and the other one was, please don't ever make me do that. So testing those things you can do pretty easily without taking a major trip and without feeling as though you had to already identify schools that were on your child's list. So you could go take a look at the University of Connecticut and see a large public institution that is in a more rural environment. Or then you can turn around and go look at Trinity College, which is a smaller institution in a city setting. So you can expose your child to those kinds of options without being heavily into, okay, now we're really going to visit schools. And it can help them get a feel for what they like and what they don't like. Also types, so I just mentioned too, University of Connecticut, Connecticut's flagship institution, large public. It's going to have, when they get to the application stage, you're going to apply into the School of Business or the School of Engineering, for example, or the School of Nursing. Trinity College, you're going to apply to Trinity College. And so just taking a look at some of the different flavors, if you will, of colleges and helping them to build up over time a sense of what their preferences are. Size, that's another one. We often tell the kids everything's going to look big after KO. I had somebody the other day saying, no, I saw lots of colleges that are only in the hundreds. I said, well, I want to see your list because really that's a very small percentage of them. But anyway, for some, again, personality makes a difference, doesn't it? There are kids who never met a crowd they didn't instantly love, and then there are other kids who really feel much more comfortable in a smaller setting where they feel like they can know everybody and where they can be known. So that is the way we try to set them off. Certainly, you know, you visit schools when it fits in with the family schedule. If you had a family vacation that was going someplace farther away and there happened to be some colleges in the area, I think I might go visit them, even though your child is only a sophomore this year. But for the most part, we're looking at kids probably visiting in the spring of their junior year and over that summer and a little bit into the fall. This is a big plea on our part. Please, 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 please. Jamie alluded to it a little bit earlier, but talk about the cost of college with your students. You can talk about the cost of college with your students even if the cost of college for your particular family is something that's reasonably doable. This is another opportunity to talk to them about being savvy consumers and making good choices. Certainly, we don't need to know individually what any of you make, but it is helpful for us to know whether or not the cost of college has an important role to play in the way we put a list together or the way your student builds his or her list. And we have resources, we run programming. We want to be your ally in identifying schools that are not only the right fit for your student for all those other kinds of reasons, but are also the right fit for your student because it's a cost of attendance that fits with your ability to pay. Okay. If it's been a while since you've been through this process, The net price calculator is now a federal requirement. Every school must have on its website, it's not the only source of net price calculators, but on each college's website will be a calculator where you can input your numbers and it will output what the likely cost of attending that college will be for your family. And that's certainly an easy way to get a feel right off the bat as to what you're probably looking at, depending on the institution. Obviously, if the tuition at one institution is up here, and there's another, I will use UConn as an example again, that is your, let me mention it again, flagship university, public university here in Connecticut. For starters, that's going to be a lower cost of attendance than some of the others. So using the net price calculator will help you get a feel for what it is looking like for you at an early stage so that you can have that conversation with your children so they know the parameters within which they need to operate. And then if you keep us apprised of what the situation is, not the details, but we can help you identify a variety of schools to put into your child's list ultimately that will be ones that make sense for your child and for your family. Okay, and an upcoming event. This is a new group for us, but we're having the Barnum group come on May 12th, 7 to 8 p.m. It would be a parent program. We never object to you bringing a child if you think it makes sense, but it's aimed, our target audience are parents and parents of children in any grade. It's never too soon to start planning. So that's it for this slide. Yes? One more? Okay. Yes, one of my favorite topics. If you are going to visit a REACH school, we talk about schools, colleges in terms of REACH. Those are the ones where the acceptance rate is really pretty low, and so the odds are not as good for your child being admitted. Targets or possibles, which are those ones in the middles, are likely. So I always joke that I never have to tell students names of REACH schools. So my job is to focus on the others. But if you're going to visit REACH schools, don't visit all REACH schools. If you're driving or flying or taking a train farther away and you're looking at some REACH schools, try to find some other schools in the area that fall into that different competitive level so that your child is seeing schools that fall in each of the three categories. When they get to junior year spring, and particularly by the time of senior year fall, we want to see a balanced portfolio of schools, and that is much harder to put together if you haven't helped them to focus on all three categories in the search process. And visiting a variety of schools in terms of how selective they are, not saying how good they are, I'm saying how selective they are in terms of the acceptance rate, visiting all of them with the goal of identifying a balanced number in each of those categories that have the same kinds of things that your child needs and wants to have it to be a good fit. They just differ in the acceptance rate. And so keeping that in mind while you're doing the visiting so that you are not visiting in a disproportionate balance is really important in terms of having a list that ultimately is a balanced list filled with schools that your child can see him or herself being happy and productive if he's or she is attending that school. Okay, and having a balanced list does a lot to relax the student in the process because they've been savvy about it. They haven't put all their eggs in the old proverbial basket. So we really, we're always looking for ways to try to reduce the stress and pressure that kids are feeling. Some of it is talking rationally about testing, and other parts of that have to do with just being very practical and strategic and putting together a list.
I just want to add one thing. So when we talk about college visits, does anybody know what happens on college campuses in the month of May? Graduation, what else? And for everybody else? Parties, maybe. Yeah, finals, right? Like, they're out of there. And so when you're thinking about college visits, I just know how quickly junior year moves and how time seems to kind of get away from most of the families I've worked with in the college process. And so if you've been through this before, maybe you know this, but summer can be a tricky time to visit college campuses. It's still worthwhile. By all means, better than nothing, absolutely. But please just keep in mind that, that the time will move very quickly, and that it does take some logistical planning, both for their school and extracurricular schedule and your personal and or professional schedule, to figure out when, during especially a weekday, you are going to be able to get out there and see a college campus, or get out there and see 8 or 9 or 10 college campuses. And so please plan ahead. Right now, KO has zero policy about how many days we give your child to take out for, to be out for college visits, which is to say, as long as they work with their teachers and you've called in and all of the appropriate boxes have been checked, they are allowed to be out for a day to tour college campuses. If I had my way, I would tell you that we had 3 days for juniors, but that is not the policy. But that is something that your family can decide as long as the student works ahead, works with their faculty and their advisor to do so. All right, so what's happening? What's coming up next? For this year, the answer is we just want your student to do really well in school, to think about who they are, what they like doing, and really just get strong grades, but most importantly, proficiency and mastery in the classroom, because next year is when we're really going to start this process. As Jamie said, that doesn't mean that you are not allowed to talk with us and even sit down with us to talk about college things, but we also know that that is going to be few and far between during the sophomore year. So please don't feel the pressure to come and meet with us yet. Know that that is coming. As we begin Form 5, junior year, we're going to start by having, we've talked about VQV. It actually stands for Winke Kinstant Winke, which is our motto here at KO. But it is also our college seminar class for juniors. And so we call it VQV. It will be on their schedule. And they will have, in the fall, a monthly college seminar where we start to talk about who do you want to be in college, where do you see yourself, and then as we get into the rest of the year, which I'll talk about, we get into more concrete steps that we're going to take. During the fall, we will also have over 100 different admissions representatives from college campuses coming here to our campus to talk to both the students. In fact, that's the most important thing that they're going to do on that visit, is talk to your sons and daughters. But they're also going to actually probably sit down for about 10, 15, 20 minutes with one or more of the three of us to get to learn KO. So sometimes you ask yourself, how do they know about KO? How do they understand what we do? And the answer is a lot of these schools are literally sitting down for meetings with us every single year to do that. Let's see what else we got. As mentioned, we're going to have practice tests, and we will begin in December with individual meetings for most students. If they really need something, they can get our attention before that. But I promise you, when your children become seniors, they're going to want all of that love in October and September as they're getting ready for the college process. And so we give as much of our time and energy to those seniors during September and October, and in November, turning our attention to juniors more so in the month of December. And then if your family has a question, of course, we can always pick up the phone. We can always answer an email. But if you want to come in and talk in person, of course, we're happy to do that as well. As we move forward in the year and we get to junior year, winter and spring, that college seminar VQV has picked up pace. It is now every other week, and we are working on concrete things. So the juniors right now are putting together their college lists and also diving deep into the questions that they care about for colleges. So it's no longer, does this school have my major? Do I like the number of students here? Is it in the region of places that I think is cool or that I want to be in? It's now questions like, do I like this business program? Does it have the features that I think I need to succeed? What kind of financial aid does this school offer? Is that appropriate for me and my family? Do I want to be a part of a school that has a robust Greek system, or do I not want that at all? Does a pre-professional track where I'm leading right towards a career work for me, or do I want to be at a liberal arts college? And so they're diving deep into those questions right now for the juniors. We're also, sitting down and having check-ins to see how are you doing with finding colleges and understanding them. And we're also now, at this point of the year, really meeting with families. We have hour-long meetings, or a little less, with every single one of our families to talk about, are we on the same page? Sometimes more. Are we on the same page? Are we moving in the right direction? What's the family's input into this process? How do we make sure that's being understood? And of course, how do we best serve you and your family as you go through this process? We are also now in the English classes, as Jamie said, and so what we want is by the end of this year, that they have a college list, or by the end of junior year, that they have a college list that's exploratory, 15 to 20 schools that are in their view, as well as a rough draft of their college essay and some standardized test scores to show that by the time we get to June, at the end of junior year, we can take a look at the colleges that are in their view and say, we think some of these schools will be really hard to get into. We think some of these schools will be, kind of meet them right where their academics have been, and some of these schools are going to be likely on their list. And so we're trying to help families figure that out with all of the information we can possibly pull together. And we want students moving into the summer confident that they've gotten this process started, that they know what the application looks like, and they've even got a rough draft of their college essay. Over the summer, we are available, so we are a 12-month office. So if your son or daughter or you want to come in and talk throughout the summer and get ahead, that is absolutely something that we love to see, and it makes for a less stressful fall, which is wonderful, because once we hit fall of senior year, this essentially becomes an additional extracurricular activity for them. We are no longer in a college seminar course anymore, and now we are meeting fairly frequently, but on an as-needed basis with all of our senior college advisees. And so we're making sure that their essay's in really good shape, that they understand their supplement essays that they need to write for each individual school, that they've got an organized system to know all of their deadlines, and that they're thinking strategically about the choices of, am I going to be applying early decision, early action, rolling, regular decision to all these different programs? Are there any opportunities that I'm missing? And of course, we're making sure that the family's input, as well as college advising's expert advice, is a part of their process and a part of the choices that they're making. Lastly, and certainly not least, we want to make sure, as the family has talked and mentioned the importance of financial aid, that we're following each of these steps with matching that same level of importance that your family brings into the process.
We appreciate your patience. I know we've talked at you for about an hour, so I thank you. Hopefully you're finding this helpful information, and hopefully it is helping decrease any anxiety or stress if you are feeling that as you walked in, and maybe making you more excited about the opportunities ahead for your child. The last thing we just want to point out, your kids actually will get invited to SCORE. That's how that is pronounced. It is our college process planning online tool. It is replacing, for those who have worked with other kids, Naviance. Our peer institutions are also going to this, and we just find that this is a better platform. Our students, you oftentimes can tell by your kids, our juniors probably have opened it almost 100 times more than our kids ever opened Naviance. And so they find it easier to use and just more intuitive. And so your kids are actually going to get access to this tomorrow. And we're not expecting them actually to talk about where they're applying. And so I think that oftentimes we rush to that as the where. Right now we're thinking about exploration of who, right? Who they are. And that's much more about what our job is. And so in their advisee groups, they will actually do some of our career planning inventories to think about who they are, what they like, and giving them some language to talk about that. And so those are some of the tools that are on SCORE. The other piece on SCORE that I actually really love is there's a ton of places for our kids to put in activities and achievements. And so for those of you who are asking about resumes, the opportunity in SCORE, they can put it in there, keep track of what they do in sophomore year, because you would be surprised, or maybe you're not, that sophomores often forget, by the time they're seniors, they forget what they did in their sophomore year. They have an opportunity to put that up on SCORE, and then there's a button that says export resume, and the resume is actually created for them. So we will give parent access. We generally give parents access to this during our family meetings, but obviously if you have questions about it, you are welcome to send us an email, and we're happy to share that with you. But we are really not looking at kind of the college data. We're looking at all the other aptitudes and surveys. So I just want to have this on the back. There are 3 different events that are coming up. We have an athletic college recruitment panel with both admissions and athletic. We're working together, a couple of admission officers from Yale and Trinity, as well as some coaches to talk about kind of what it looks like to get recruited and kind of how you go along that process. And so that will happen on March 3rd. The SAT, ACT, as I mentioned before, and then the last is the financing your education. And that really is, I think, more for underclassmen parents to think about how do I manage the finances and affording of college, not so much about the forms of how to go through the financial aid process. That comes in the fall for juniors and senior parents.
And you'll find all of these in the Wyvern Weekly.
So that is it. I want to be able to answer any of your questions. I'm going to put that guide up, but obviously you have access to our emails in many different ways, and so please don't hesitate to give us a call, but I would love to hear if there are questions from you all. Yes? Yep. So the question was, there's a ton of historical data about applications and scattergrams in Naviance, and SCORE has all of that data as well. We have actually imported all of our historical data from 2004 up. So all the same data, all the same scattergrams are in SCORE as they were in Naviance. So that feature is still very much there. Yeah. It looks a little bit different, to be honest with you, and it's gotten us a little bit getting used to, and we're happy to walk you through it, but it's on each individual school's page. Yes? So Matt had referred to the fact that many of our college admission officers are coming and sitting down with us. Every application gets a school profile. So the school profile, anybody can look at it, right? All of you can look at it, it's on our website. But it's really meant for the college applications and the college admission officers, and it walks through the rigor of our curriculum as well as kind of the signature programs. And so that is very much on every single application. It really is like the guide, if you will, of like what the transcript looks like. It is really important. I mean, this is like the question we were talking about, that it's the question everybody wants to know, right? How are the colleges going to understand kind of the rigor that our students are going and the choice that they've made to come here? In every school, in every college, and I promise you, and I say that I promise because I was in that seat, it is our responsibility as a college admission officer to get to know each individual school and understand each individual school. And the students, or the colleges, are looking at each student in the context of their high school, right? What are the opportunities and courses available at that institution? And that's really important. And I think that is the most important piece of this, is understanding what does the landscape look like for that kid at that school in their context. That is how the process is working. And so I think the question often is like, how are they comparing it to other schools? To be perfectly honest, colleges aren't necessarily comparing it, right? Like, they're not taking one student from here and one student here and saying we can only take one, and so we must only take that one. They oftentimes are taking potentially both of those students, right? But I also think it's important. There are highly selective institutions, so I'll use Conn College since I worked there. Connecticut College is one of the most selective colleges in the country, right? If you look on our scattergram, it is virtually all green, which means all accepts. So almost every student, not every student. It is highly selective, but we have a really strong number of students who are getting in at all various levels of GPAs. Not every single student, so I don't want to make it a blank case that anybody who goes there gets in, but it is looking at kind of, you see a range of rigor and a range of GPA of kids getting in. If you were to look at that same scattergram at one of our local public schools, it does not look all green. Right? And as a college admission officer, I knew it was my responsibility as a professional to go in and understand what does it mean for that kid to take that class at KO. Don't be shy. I know it's a long night. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, you have a great point, and it is something that we tell students. I do think that, there's a couple things that happen here that we know that we can do to counteract that. And some of that is, trying to figure out what works best for the student and really focusing on that, but more so building up the confidence that they're going to have in the process. So one of the things that I know that I've seen be a huge kind of challenge for a lot of students as they enter the college process, and it's okay if some of you have done this, but parents just want to take their kid to the first college and they chose say a random school like Yale to take them on their very first college visit. And so I think by that we're sending kind of a message to the student right away about what it is that we value in schools, and it really ramps up the stress level for them, and they start to look for ways to compare themselves to the people around them. And so finding a couple colleges that you can take them to early that are going to boost their confidence, where they're saying, this place is amazing and I'm pretty sure I can get in here, does something awesome for a student. It's the same reason why we want students applying to college early when there's early action, is that when they get that first acceptance, their senior year changes. And so we want those early things to happen so that there's some success. Now, there's also some just truth to what we can't control about how students think and feel. I have students that I have really wonderful working relationships with that I've said points to them, and they've kind of come back and asked me a second and third time the same question. And I'll say, I'm telling you this, we've talked about this, you just kind of don't believe me. And they're like, yeah, I don't.
And parents, I know you have no idea what that looks like.
And yes, and so what I will say is there are also avenues that they can turn with their anxiety, particularly online, and avenues that you can turn with your anxiety, particularly online, that are meant to feed your anxiety. There are websites, and I'm not going to name them because I hate them, that they have message boards. You may need an account. You may be able to just sign on. And anybody can put any information they want up there. They can put wonderful information, very helpful information. And I promise you this, there's a lot of feelings that go into the college process. And for whatever reason, the internet has cultivated some very dark spaces where people with hurt feelings go on and try to purposefully disrupt other people. And so there are websites around college acceptances that have disinformation on them because the person who wrote that, for whatever reason, is probably hurting inside and wants to make other people anxious too. And so to avoid those obsessive websites and instead rely on the people around you that you think have really healthy perspectives, hopefully our office that you trust to have a really healthy perspective, is going to help students not sit there and compare themselves to their 3 friends that go to Conard, and their 4 friends that go to Hall, and their friends that are down the road at that other school. Because honestly, it's not how colleges operate in the admissions game, and we'll say that every day.
Yeah. Also talking about GPA, it's when you start going to college, on college visits and information sessions, certainly if you want to ask them about GPA, but I've done a few of those college visits, but one of my favorite schools is the University of Georgia, which, by the way, a few years ago when I had a student who had that school on the list, and they don't visit us, I can promise you, but I called and I found out who the Connecticut rep was, and that rep would get back to me within 1 minute of my placing an email saying, do you have time to talk? But University of Georgia, when they're recalculating a student's transcript, does not count freshman year, because they're letting every freshman get adjusted to high school before they start to figure out what matters in terms of grades. Other schools will only count core courses. Some of them will wait and some of them will not. Some schools, I was at St. Paul Catholic High School for 3.5 years. Our students took religion class 5 days a week for 4 straight years. Some colleges would not include that if they were not a Catholic college. So I think some of the how do they know has to do with trusting that the college admission people know their business, as Jamie's been suggesting. And they have their own formulas for evaluating a high school transcript, and or you will get some who say, we don't need to do a mathematical calculation, a recalculation, because we get transcripts. That's our business. We know how to look at it. And then matching that with the fact that we have a school profile, as Jamie was saying, that explains it. So for example, the college will know that we're, that we have this grading average and that we're on a, if they're recalculating, for the scattergrams, for example, we're on a 4.0. When I was at St. Paul Catholic, one of the other schools in the Archdiocese did work on a 5.0 average. The colleges are responsible for knowing that, and many times they're recalculating anyway. So I think part of it is just calming your child down to saying, trust that the colleges understand the differences, and have systems for making sure that to the extent you can over all the different high schools that are in this country and internationals, of finding a way of evaluating a transcript so that they are evening things out from their own perspective, and also becoming expert by reading school profile, or certainly for the 100 or so colleges that we see on a regular basis, understanding KO, so that it's not going to be a mystery to them. Okay.
If you're seeing your kid freak out, I would encourage you to reach out to us and we can be your partner in this. That's the other piece. The more we can tell them the same message, the better. Because otherwise they're just listening to their friends, and we all know that their friends know best, right? Let's be real, that's where sometimes they're feeding each other's anxieties, and that's where the information, we all know this as adults, kind of where teens see as most important. Oftentimes it's social media and their peers, right, who have all never been through this process. Other questions? Yes? Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is about, do we know beyond just the academic experience, but also the culture and the climate of the institution when a kid is coming to us with that question? I'll be honest with you, there are 4,000 colleges out there, right? We can't be experts about what the culture and climate is on every institution, but we can get to know your kid. We can also get to know what's most important to them, and we help them ask the right questions to get at that question, and ask the right people to answer that question. Oftentimes, that question, the kids will go to statistics, and they will go to clubs and organizations. And that's really a surface level, right? Does it have a Black student union? Does it have racial and ethnic diversity? Does it have international students represented on that campus? And the answer oftentimes is yes, right? But it also doesn't answer kind of what does inclusiveness look like on that campus. And so that's kind of what Matt was talking about in VQV. We spend a lot of time talking with kids. There are certain colleges that we know better, right? I just spent 2 days at Lynn University in Florida. I feel like I've gotten to know that college pretty well and kind of the types of students that do well there. I worked at a couple of institutions. We spend our time on, I'm also on the WashU board, the Washington University in St. Louis, and the Grinnell Advisory Board, right? So I spend a lot of time at these institutions. But between the three of us, we are going on, almost once a month virtually, right? Not every month, but going to these colleges, getting onto campuses, doing college tours, talking with other professionals, going to professional development conferences to get to know the culture and climate of those institutions. But most importantly, we're trying to work with your kid and you to figure out what are the questions they need to ask to really get at what's important to them.
I also think this is another question where being at a day school makes a difference. And so, yes, if your child is interested in a school where we don't have a graduate there, we may have to find other ways of helping your child or learning ourselves. We often actually, believe it or not, learn a lot from whenever you have a child who looks at something that maybe we're less familiar with. But if you're talking about schools where we have alums, we know that, and we're more than happy to say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so, let me help make the connection. The alum has the advantage of knowing both KO and knowing the school where they are. And so that can be a really helpful thing. I'm not sure how well that works in another setting other than a day school where you have people who've been here a while. Maybe it does, but I know it's something that works here.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So she asked about, how do we help students with college interviews? So a couple notes. One, college interviews are probably not the same as they used to be, and so that is that they're rarely evaluative to figure out if a student is worthy of admission, right? So often they are tools to see two things. One, is this student interested in our school? And they have a lot of avenues for that, right? Did they visit campus? Are they on our email list? Have they talked with the admissions rep? But that's another check for that box, right? Are they really interested in our school? The second thing that the interview does is it's a really great source of information. So in some ways, maybe the school gets a little more information on the student that could be helpful, but in most cases, it's actually the opposite, that they want the student to really understand the school. But the question that you asked was, how can they prep for the interview, and do we offer anything for that? And the answer is yes. So we can set up at almost any time a student asks for it, a mock interview for them, either within the KO admissions office. We've had them help out with mock interviews because that's what they do for a living. Not mock interviews, but they interview. And we also do it ourselves within our office. We try to pair the student with somebody that they don't really know, because we want them to have that experience of walking in and talking to essentially a stranger about one mutual shared interest, which is this college and thoughts around college in general. We also offer a day during senior year when the juniors and the sophomores are testing, that we offer students to sign up, and so that's early or mid-October, that we offer them the chance to do that as well. So it's really offered any time, but we also have a structured day where, in addition to a number of other offerings, that's an experience they can have.
And you folks out there who have had older children go through there and you're saying, I don't remember that, you're right. We did it for the first time that way this year.
Yes.
So you talked a lot about the summer program and a lot of those extracurricular activities. I'm wondering, would some of the activities the kids did
Absolutely. So the question was, does what a kid does during spring break count, right? In the same way as activities during the summer or after school? And the answer is yes. I would actually say that whatever the kid is doing counts, right? They're trying to get to know your kid. And so there isn't a checklist of what the kid must do based on whether they can get in, right? It's trying to get to know what the kid likes, who they are, and why they like to do what they do. And so they're looking at everything. And we are spending time kind of getting to know your kid and how they've spent their time when they have time to spend, to understand why they've done it and what's important to them. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for being patient. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. Oh, hold on one second.
Jamie, so that's what you do. I just wanted to say a couple words. Thank you, Jamie. There's a question about the GPA as well and the inflated GPAs, and I have some experience with that as well as a former head of upper school and working closely with the college office. I was at a school in Florida, and every year the St. Pete Times would have an insert around graduation time of all of the valedictorians and salutatorians in all of the area schools. And if you went through it, it would show their SAT score, their GPA, and the school that they were attending. Awful. Actually, no, it didn't show the SATs, but it showed their GPA and the school that they were attending. And it would be a whole host of parochial, public schools, and Shorecrest was, I think, the only independent school in the area. You would see, of all of these valedictorians and salutatorians, these very high inflated GPAs of 5 point something, even above 6 a couple of times like that. And you would look at one would assume that the schools that they were attending would have to be Harvard, Princeton, Yale with GPAs like that. And I will just say that they were not whatsoever. And that the GPA from our school, which was invariably considerably lower, that there was a different set of schools as well. So though there is that game out there of that high GPA, that inflated GPA, and as they, I think, very, very articulately said, the schools understand that, and they really look at, at the schools themselves and what they do. I also just ran up here because I wanted to publicly thank the three of you, Jamie, Peggy, and Matt, for a wonderful job, not just tonight, but we have a fantastic college office of experts here. And I've gone through it with my junior already, or we are going through it, and I've seen it at different schools as well, and use them as a resource. These people are fantastic, and there will be lots of questions that you will have coming in the coming years, and don't be afraid to ask them. But thank you all for this wonderful presentation tonight. So.